It's an adjustment to a political shock, quite clearly. An adjustment, though, is the word that everyone's using, and I wonder when it gets critical enough that people start using the word run on sterling. You know, how far away is that, and what kind of a move do you need to see for it to speak to that, Kit?
Quite a lot faster than anything we've had now. So, I mean, I would see, you know, if we dip through 130 and stabilise 125, 130, and then eventually fall to 120, 125 in sterling against the dollar, I would see that as an adjustment. A rapid move below 125 in the next week or so, you know, kind of, you'd be getting much more alarmed, because that's the pace of the move that would alarm me. I would also say that, you know, if you got back to the kind of the 105 level that was the low,
yeah,
it's still in September 85. We went a long way in September 85. I vaguely seem to remember all in the last few weeks of that month, but that looks overdone to me in terms of the move. So something between 120, 125 in terms of move away from fundamental fair value is a bit like dollar yen trading at 125, which I've just seen, followed by a bounce. So in perspective, we're not there yet.
We're not. And the consensus, the overwhelming consensus here in the city, is that it was an orderly move, a real adjustment to account for structural issues. But rate cuts, talk me through that. I just wonder, the question that I have in my mind at the moment is, what does the Bank of England achieve to a rate cut? Cutting bank rate from 50 basis points to 25. What do you get out of that, Kit?
I guess at this point, if you're making sure you're getting more cheap funding into the banking sector so that liquidity is plentiful, and you know, and it's part of that process, and you signal a willingness to make sure monetary policy stays accommodative, even in the face of a weaker pound. But you know, I don't disagree with the central principle that you know, this won't help bank profitability, for example, at that stage terribly much, and it's not obvious to me that on its own moving bank rate down is going to do a lot to revive loan demand and to get the economy going. At this stage, you know, a range of measures such as funding for lending, things specifically targeted to ease lending conditions to people who want to borrow, are more effective on lending. And if ever there was a country where perhaps some fiscal easing to improve infrastructure, provision of services, all those queues and waiting lists in hospitals and in doctor surgeries that are part of the root cause of the referendum result, perhaps that would be a good idea too.
So, Kit, as we see the pound grind lower, what we're not seeing is the euro pretty much flat against the dollar. If you take a look at the chart in my Bloomberg here, I'm taking a look at the euro dollar versus the 5-year real rates of the euro versus the U.S. So that blue line is the currency marker, and you can see there the euro kind of moving higher against the dollar. And the white line, you're also seeing European 5-year yields move higher against the U.S. Do we see that gap converge, meaning a stronger euro in the light of all this uncertainty still?
I don't think so, but I think what that line does show is why the euro isn't falling on the back of fears about the economic effect or the contagion impact of what's going on in the UK. So the fact that real interest rates are supportive for the euro means it can't go down, and it's basically not moving very much. It's a good bit stronger than I think you would have suspected certainly if you'd read the first note I wrote a week ago about this, or you know, so it's doing better than I had expected for precisely that reason. U.S. real yields have fallen faster than European real yields, partly because they had a little bit further to fall. But from here, I suspect we will trade euro-dollar in a range for a number of weeks, perhaps for the rest of the summer, and then we will reassess in terms of where we are on the U.S. economy, where we are on the European economy. If the U.S. economy sails on at the kind of 2% growth rate it's been running at, and if the European economy does start to take an economic hit from what's happening in the UK, then I think we'll see euro-dollar trade lower. But that's very much for another day. There's certainly no relief for British people thinking about a holiday in warmer parts of Europe right now.
Kit, very briefly, if you can, separate out 3 possible causes of the value of the pound right now. One of them is, as you call it, fundamental underlying fair value. That's number 1. Number 2 is just an uncertainty premium or dispremium, because we don't know exactly where it's going. And the third is simply trading. How much of each of those accounts for what we're seeing right now in the pound?
I think the fundamental fair value sort of defines to me the limits of where we can go. So if I had a simple vision, 25% above or below a fair value for pound against the dollar around about 150 is it looks really extreme outside that. So we're inside that, and it's not a big driver day to day. In terms of trading, I thought that the market taking shorts off drove the bounce to 150 that really threw people out last Thursday night, just ahead of the results were beginning to come in, so we're getting fresh shorts get put on, and that drives the volatility. But it's the uncertainty that drives the gilt market, the uncertainty that drives sentiment. It's the uncertainty that's already hitting sensitive areas of the economy like construction, and that's doing 80% of the damage to both economy and currency at this point in time.